Oh, all right. Hot tea. What's up, guys? Welcome to another broken episode. Shoulder is still completely destroyed, so I still can't lift a camera, and that's kind of a bummer way to start the new year, I guess. But Happy New Year, nonetheless. Since I'm still waiting on more doctors and more opinions and more potential surgery stuff, and I still need to make a video, I figured that I would jump on the end of the year bandwagon and show you guys some of my favorite photos and talk about a few things that people have asked me and just give some insights as to what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about a favorite image, or what I'm thinking about when I look to create an image. So hopefully it'll be some sort of entertaining. But I also wanted to, on the note of like favorite images, I also wanted to say that like I'm not one of those people who correlates favorite with like um, best quality or technicals or anything like that. Like I think a lot of my favorites, especially from this year, I think would not win any awards at all. And if they were to be judged by a panel of judges, that in that context they probably wouldn't do so well. But I think that's one of the important things for doing an episode like this and talking about that is it's okay. Not every image has to be portfolio worthy. I didn't get that many as many images. I have a lot of images that I want to show you guys because I took a lot of images this year and I had a really hard time narrowing it down. So I definitely didn't narrow it down into images per se, as to like maybe sets of images or pairs of images for things that I took, on a specific outing that I think go really well together and make me happy. But I cut myself off and I totally forgot what I was going to say. But oh, yeah, I think it's important for your own health and for if you're looking to get better at photography and all of that stuff and just the mindset in general, it's really important to consider the best work that you've done over a year. As for me, I look at it like, what images did I create this year that bring back the best memories? And for 2022, especially being the worst and hardest year of my life, for sure, losing my dad. If you guys don't know about that, I think I made a video about it. It happened back in May, but it's something that I'm still struggling with a little bit. And just 2022 overall, I think was just kind of a crappy year for a lot of things. But I don't like to be negative, and I think that's another reason why I need to force myself to do this, is because going through all of these images and looking back on my year, I realized that I had quite an incredible year for the memories that I made and the things that I did and captured and places that I saw and experiences that I had with my family and all of this stuff. Like it was amazing. And then of course I had amazing growth on YouTube as well, and I have you guys to thank for that. So I love you guys for that. So let's just jump into some of my favorites. I don't think I'm going to have an order to them. I think I might try to categorize them because, as you guys know, I do a lot of different stuff. So it's not easy for me to say favorites overall, because let's break it down into like landscape, astro, and wildlife, and then maybe any random things that are not in those three categories. I don't know. But I think those are the three biggest categories that I focused on this year, and that I'm most excited about. I think maybe we'll get the craziest part out of the way first. And that was definitely monsoon season and lightning. So I think we've had one of the best and definitely the longest monsoons that I can remember in New Mexico in a very, very long time. And monsoon season in the Southwest is incredible. And for me, that means epic clouds and, most importantly, lots of lightning. And I did get lots of lightning. I got so much lightning, and I missed so much lightning. There was so many storms even so close to me this year that I just didn't even bother going out for, that it could have been even more insane. But even with the amount that I did, I had a really hard time narrowing it down. But let's take a look at a few of my favorite images. This is the first image that I captured, I believe, of the season. I don't remember when this was. It was May or June. I could probably look it up, but I don't really care. So this was one of the first, and I think I do have videos of just about all of the images that I'm capturing here that I'm talking about today. So that's the other cool thing for me, at least, about having the YouTube channel is that I can, for one, tell you, hey, go check it out, and you'll see how and when and all that stuff that I made it. But for me, it's just it's a nice feeling knowing that I documented uh, that adventure, you know. So that's kind of cool. But I do remember making this image, and I do remember chasing, and I remember stopping at this rest stop thinking there was no way I was going to get under these power lines because there's these massive power lines, and the lightning was like right behind them, and they were just running the whole length of the highway, and there just was nowhere to go, and I barely got underneath it with my 70 to 200, and then there was this little house, and I remember at first being bummed that there was the house there. Like I just kind of wanted, you know, more natural. But then I just thought, like, man, that really shows like a good scale, and it shows the power, you know. And like you can look and you can see like there's lights on in this house, and like somebody's whole world is inside that house right now, and they're just sitting there, and outside their whole world, this is going on. And I just remember thinking like that's kind of cool. So you know, rather than try to reframe or recompose or Photoshop it all out or whatever, I just went with it, and I'm kind of happy that I did. So here's another one of my favorites. This was probably mid-monsoon season again. I don't really care about the date. I do remember this day though very well because it was so frantic. In the video, you could just see like I'm all over the place, and I kept this day, like I kept missing because I was trying to do too many things at once, which is a classic me thing to do. And I was trying to film, and I was trying to time lapse, and I was trying to get shots, and it was raining like where we were, like I was in the rain, and I kept trying to wipe off the lens and all of that stuff. And every time I would stop to wipe the lens off, I would miss the shot. And I missed these just massive bolts. As good as I love this image, as good as the lightning bolts are, and as much as I love this image, it was nowhere near as good as the 3 bolts before it that I missed. uh, and I just remember being so frantic, and I made like a short story out of it, and it did like so well. It was just so funny with me just constantly freaking out because I kept checking to see if I got the shot, but I missed the shot. But I did get the shot. Persistence paid off, and it was electric enough, the storm, that it just kept going. And I got this one shot before we had to move on, and I was so glad because I got La Capilla, which is Spanish for the little church. It's just a historic landmark here in Silver City in my hometown, and you can see the college back there and downtown and the mountains, and just everything kind of worked. I love the leading line of the pathway going basically straight to the lightning, and I love the texture in the sky because you can see it was just absolutely dumping. And daytime lightning is really tricky to nail. That's why I was so frustrated, because you just can't do long exposures because you'll lose the bolts, you know. So having to do these shorter exposures was really frustrating me. And I finally got it though, and I was so happy. So this shot definitely sticks out in my mind, even though from a lighting standpoint, it's probably not one of my better shots, you know, but it is pretty good. And I just love remembering the chaos of that day when I look at this image. So we can move from chaos to straight fear, and that will give us this night. So this was another night that I went out, and it started off really well because the storms were really far away, and I was cool, and everything was chill. And I do believe I vlogged this also. But then all of a sudden this second storm started creeping up, and me and camera lady were on this hill filming, and we knew that we had to get out of there because, you know, like calculated risk, you know. It was getting dangerous. I could see the storm front coming right towards us. So we got out of there, and we got a little ways just around it, and I stepped out for a few minutes to get this shot. And the scary thing about this image is it's not cropped. And this was like, I don't remember if it was 16 or 24 millimeter, but it was wide and it was not cropped, and it was a bit terrifying. So do as I say, not as I do. Calculated risk is a real thing. Always make sure that you understand the risks, and I understand very well what I'm doing, and my risk is my own. So I would never tell anybody else to do the kind of things that I do, but I do at least know that I am taking every bit of calculated risk in everything that I do. So there is that. And it definitely paid off for this shot, I think. This wasn't even the closest bolt to me that I captured, but I just really liked this composition and the texture and the clouds and the area and everything. Oh, here's another day shot lightning that everything just really came together. This is like a mile from my house. This is like right down the road from my house. I was so happy that I was able to catch this, and I got this time lapse, and it came out, I think, so well. And at first I thought I didn't get anything, but I ended up, this is a composition of two shots from the time lapse. So it's a blend of four bolts happened in within two shot. And this is just one of those moments where I had been wanting to get this mountain range and this kind of shot for a long time with lightning right here. But what I didn't anticipate is the light, lighting up this foreground. I didn't anticipate it being that good with the clouds behind it being so dramatic. So just overall as a landscape composition, I was very happy with it. But then when you add the lightning in there, it just makes it over the top for me. So I was super, super excited. And I don't think I vlogged this one, actually. I don't think we had time. But I do remember getting this time lapse and thinking, well, this is going to be a great time lapse. And then going back and editing the time lapse and being like, whoa, 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 there's some bolts in here, and then putting it together. And it's like, it just made me so happy to see all this stuff come together that I've been trying for this spot, because, lightning is just never guaranteed. But everything just came together and I was super stoked. And speaking of monsoons, since we're still in the monsoons, this image, there was a couple of images from this day that I really loved. And I vlogged this. I think it was something called Photographing the Green Desert. It was such a fun vlog to do. This is in Deming, outside of Deming, the Florida mountains. And it's about an hour from my house. And we had just been inundated with all of these monsoons, and it was so green. Like the grass is super blooming grass everywhere. And things that just look normally sand and barren and deathy were just completely alive. And I took this shot, and when I saw the way that the mountain was framing the tree, and then I saw the grasses and everything, and this one little cloud right there, I knew I had something. And I think this might have been with the 70 to 200 or the 1 to 500. I know it was with a telephoto lens, because I remember being like across the street, the road or something, on the side of the road or something when I took this. This was the shot from the same area, from the same evening. We ended up getting a pretty nice sunset. This is one of my favorite mountains of all time. This is called Cook's Peak. It is featured prominently throughout the years in my YouTube video and my portfolio. I've shot this mountain a million times, and I love it. I just absolutely love it. I love the shape of it. I love the way this should not be green. And you can see this one lone cactus here, and you can just see all of this stuff that's never green, these acacia bushes, the rock, the lava flows, and then you can see just there's so many layers in this photo that just from foreground to midground to the background to the sky just popping, and it's so vibrant. Like I almost didn't have to do anything, and it's just mind-blowing that it was that vibrant. Let's go to fall real quick. Let's move on to fall. I shot so many fall images this year. It was just ridiculous. Oh my God, it was hard picking, but I picked a few. This I think was the first one that I took, and it technically wasn't even fall yet, but it just had that fall vibe. I think I took this like mid-September, so technically not fall yet, but the vibe that morning was just amazing. I was out chasing some elk and trying to get some elk photos, and I just stumbled upon this scene and turned over, and the sun was just coming up, and it just had that golden hour fall vibes. So I'm gonna go with fall anyway, even though it's still summer. And it ended up being like 70 or 80 degrees that day, as is typical for New Mexico. But man, I just love that vibe. Then we went up to Taos in that area, northern New Mexico, for some just what it turned out to be incredible. Like the trip ended up getting ruined in a couple of ways that I'm not going to go into, but we ended up changing our plans a little bit and doing a couple things. And this day was just ended up being so magical, and I just am so thankful for it. And we went up to stay with a friend of mine who lives up near Taos, between Santa Fe and Taos, and he was like, "Hey, I found this road that I think I want to go check out." And he's not a photographer at all. He's like, "Man, I think there's some cool stuff there." And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." And hopped in his truck, and he took us up there, and we made a whole video about it. So this one is definitely on the YouTube's captured, documented. This shot, I don't know, like I think it wasn't very popular on Instagram or anything like that, so I don't think like a lot of people liked it. It really stuck out to me. I love the prominence of this aspen. I love the layers, and if you'll notice, like I did a really shallow depth of field, so nothing but this tree is actually in focus and the foreground that's, aligned with it. And I don't know why, but I kind of like that. Not everything in landscape I think has to be F11 perfectly sharp, focus stacked from, front to back, all the works. That definitely has its time and place, and I love doing it. But in this instance, I think the out of focus bits make it feel a little more intimate, a little more ethereal. They make you focus on this tree. And I just love the vibe. It's like I'm shaded by fall, and I don't know how to describe it, but I just love that feeling. And then I was literally standing in the exact same spot and turned 90 degrees, and I get this shot. And this one definitely did do well on the social webs, the social medias. People seem to like this one a lot. And just that classic S-curve, windy path right down the middle. And these, like the sun going back behind the aspens, backlit, just the composition as a whole, I absolutely love it. And it was such a magical scene. It was like slightly raining the whole time, which just added to the epicness. And then after Taos, I came back to the Gila, and I made a series of videos for about fall in the Gila. By this time it was late fall, and I spent most of the time pretty frustrated. But this was the first shot that I ended up getting of those Gila fall images. And what's interesting about this is like I didn't really like it at first, but it did really well on social media. And then when I was editing the video and putting it in the video and staring at it, and um, I just kind of sort of fell in love with it, and I really love it. I love the leading line of the river. I love the composition. I love this one yellow tree sticking out, this rock down here, all the nettles and stuff, from the pine trees, and just the whole flow of the image, pun intended, I love. And then I wrapped up fall by going up to Bosque del Apache, and I was, of course, looking for birds and doing wildlife and cranes and snow geese and the works. But I ended up getting this image, and I was testing out, I think, and I vlogged this too. This was a wildlife video, and I was testing out the R7, I think, but I knew it was like just the colors were popping, everything was beautiful, and I didn't want to deal with, I think I had maybe the 800 on the R7, and I didn't want to deal with switching, so I kept my R5 with my 1 to 500 on my shoulder as a backup, and just driving by, and I just pulled over, stopped up, got out of the car, and just literally snapshotted this with the R5 at 100 millimeters right there, that one beautiful tree, these incredible mountains, the foreground, all of these willows and the trees just turning in front, and then just the very subtle painter-like, texture in the sky with the sun just coming through on the highlights of these mountains. Oh, it's just such an awesome scene, and it's something that I wasn't expecting because I was so in the wildlife mindset, like looking for wildlife, and to have this scene just basically slap me in the face. That's what I'm going to think of every time I see this image, and I just absolutely love it. I didn't do as much astro this year as I wanted to. I think I started out with this image, and this is definitely not a good image by any means, especially because of the haze. The haze really ruined this evening. But what I love about it is I do like the composition. This is Orion the Hunter. Well, it's part of him. It's his body, you know. And then here's Beetlejuice up here, which is so cool. But then when you zoom in, you can see that I got a pretty good detail in Orion's Nebula and even a little bit in the Horsehead and Flame Nebula. But that's not what I was going for in this image. What I really wanted to capture was a wide field with the Witch's Head. So this part down here is the Witch's Head, and it's a very faint nebula. It's not an emission nebula, it's a reflective nebula, which is why it's so hard to capture. And it would have been better with a longer lens and better tracker and the works, you know, spending more time on it. But the fact that I was able to put this together in one night and one go and get the Witch's Head in there and have enough detail to bring it out, I was just, personally, I was very, very excited, very happy with that. So that was super cool, even though the image itself is kind of lackluster. And we got a couple of moon stuff. I did do an eclipse or two this year, but they weren't amazing. I think this was the beginning of the first eclipse that I got this year, and full moon, blood moon, you know, 800 millimeter. This was super cool. But then I got this shot too. I love this. I love the colors. I love the fading and the clouds and the textures and the foreground. And again, my favorite mountain, Cook's Peak, right there. I love the feel and look of this image. It makes me quite happy. Oh, and then one more astro image. So this one I was pretty proud of because this one was not on a tracker. This was with this R6 and the 70-200 f4. This was like 70 shots at 5 seconds, ISO 51,000. So stacked, they came together really well. I was very happy with this. I love the dark horse here. I love, this is what I was going for. This is the center of the Milky Way, and this is the Lagoon Nebula and the Trifid Nebula. And I just love that I was able to capture this much detail with no tracker and just a regular camera and a regular lens. It just really made me happy. And this was such a clear night. I remember this was during the monsoon season, and this was literally like the only clear night we had for like probably 3 months straight, you know. And I was so glad that I got off my lazy rump and went out there and we captured this. And we did make a video about this too, so that was fun being out there. And other things didn't go so well that night, but this did, and I was so, so happy. All right, let's jump into some wildlife real quick. So I had some great wildlife this year, and I want to let's start off with some small stuff, because I think it's important to not dismiss, like, especially when it comes to wildlife, it's important to not dismiss the small things and not dismiss the common things. You know, so like my first favorite shot would be this guy right here. And this is a rufous hummingbird. This is late summer, and I was out looking for wildlife. I was out looking for elk actually, but I stumbled on this bush that had a lot of good bird activity because of the monsoons bringing in all these flowers. It was just really great for bird activity. So I set up my camo and I staked this bush out for a while, and I got some great stuff. And this was just so much fun seeing this little rufous come back and just stuff his face full of these little flowers, these little viney flowers. It's technically not the greatest wildlife image. The background is super busy, you know, and that kind of stuff. But I just don't care because I love it, because it just really, I think, shows this animal and this bird, this character. It's also quite difficult to get decent, at least for me, it's quite difficult to get decent hummingbird shots that aren't at feeders. So when I get them out in the wild, I just feel that much more sense of like pride and accomplishment, you know? So nailing this guy just in the wild at random, and, you know, and getting this behavior and the color and everything I was very, very excited for that. All right, last small bird happiness. This is one of the classic bird on a stick shots, so there is a nice background in terms of there's nothing back there, so it's pretty blurred out even at f 7.1, which I was shooting at on the 1-500. To me, you know, getting this black-throated sparrow, they're one of my favorite sparrows, and I very rarely see them, even though they're out here. They're pretty common in New Mexico in certain areas and stuff. They're very flighty, and they're They're not anywhere near like where I normally go for like my walks and all that stuff in my house. I don't have any of my feeders. So I don't see them that often. And just getting this good of a shot of one that day just made my day. And I absolutely love him. Like, he's the coolest looking dude ever. Like, he's dressed for success. He's in his tux. He's super cool looking. The shot is okay. It's moderately decent. Bird on a stick. You know, there's nothing amazing going on, but it's a great portrait and it's of one of my favorite birds. So I take that as a win. This guy. So my buddy Mike Perea and I went out. We went out to look for some elk. We were obviously hoping for some big boys, but we were just like, we had just found the big boys, but they were really far away and they were going away and couldn't get to them. And we were kind of bummed out. We're like, hey, let's head back for breakfast. And we're like walking back, like on the dirt road. We're walking back to where we camped. And all of a sudden we see this guy in the distance and he didn't see us yet. And he was kind of like coming down that mountain in the background and heading towards the field that we were in. And so we just dropped, we just dropped and just waited. And he just came right up into this field, and the first bit of sunlight just poked over the mountain, and just the colors, I just love this golden light. And he is just so adorable. And then I got an even closer shot of him when he came up and he was eating and his tongue was out. And I love the behavior. I love you could see the light just lighting up the little felt on his, the little velvet on his antlers there. And the lighting in the background was so nice and so soft. And then you've got I'm shooting through like a bunch of sage. So I just absolutely love that. It gives a lot of depth to the image. And this is where he was like smelling and tasting the air. So I think he could smell us, but he couldn't see us because we weren't moving. I think we were hidden pretty well. I was all camoed up and everything. But he knew something, like he had that weird feeling like something was going on. But he kept eating for a little bit. And then eventually he just moseyed on back up the hill. And it was just such a cool experience, even though he wasn't a big boy and he didn't have, the amazing rack of antlers that we were looking for. He's wildlife and he's beautiful and he's super cool too. And I'm glad that I shot him in the face. Oh, I know I said no more little guys, but this guy, this least bittern was like one of my favorite things from 2022. And that's because like this dude is so rare. Like they're rare for New Mexico. They really don't ever come here unless they're like super lost. I've never seen one here. It was a big, big hubbub on eBird and all over the birding community. There's a bittern. There's a least bittern at Bosque. Everybody get up there. And I didn't know. We just went up there for that fall session to film my initial R7 video up there. And this guy I got chatting with in the parking lot, this guy was like, hey, check this out. I got this shot of this bittern over at the boardwalk. And I was like, holy cow, that's amazing. And he's like, yeah, I got it this morning. And I was blown away. And I was like, well, this was evening time. And I was like, well, there's probably no way. But camera lady and she was like, well, let's just go over there and check it out. And because it's a pretty area anyways. And lo and behold, we walk over there and this is literally the first bird that I see. And he's right there off the boardwalk. And he was just fishing, didn't mind me at all. I shot him in the face with both stills and video, and it was in the video. I just love it. It's so cool. So cool capturing that rare for us bird, and so cool getting this behavior, and so cool that this was one of the few times that the R7 didn't wonk out on me. I have a love-hate relationship with the R7, which I'll definitely talk about in a full review. But it nailed it, and I'm so glad that it did. And I'm shooting on the 1:500. This is like ISO 10,000 or something ridiculous at like, 60th of a second. So that was impressive. Just the whole thing is after the sun had gone down. I just absolutely love this shot. This might be my favorite wildlife shot from 2022 overall, and this was of this beautiful fluffy coyote. And when I see this picture, I just want to fluff his little face so bad. He is beautiful, and it's so good to see them in such good health out there. This is at Bosque del Apache, and I'm just driving the loop after the cranes blasted off. I just figure we'd go for a little drive and see what we see. Lo and behold, 3 coyotes run right in front of us, and I was able to actually get out of the car and like army crawl around on the ground. And this guy walked right up to the edge of the road And that's where I shot him in the face, and he was so beautiful. And it just makes me so happy because I love coyotes and wolves. I couldn't ask for a better portrait. The fact that I was even able to get close enough to get a portrait of a coyote and not just one standing in a field, like that just made my day. Like it made my year, really. Same trip. This is kind of a mix between wildlife and landscape, and I wanted it to be that way. Everybody else, there was like 300 other photographers there, and they all had their 600 f4s with their teleconverters, like trying to get as close as possible. But then it's like the full moon was setting, and this was right before dawn. This is before sunrise, and the cranes were waking up and taking off. And we have the beautiful mountains and Socorro in the background, the Magdalena Mountains. And I was just so stoked when this lined up, and I was so glad that I had my 1-500 out there and not some big prime or something, because anyone with a prime wouldn't have been able to get this shot. So this is backed out to 100 millimeters and just waiting for those cranes to fly by at the right time. And then that's when I got this shot. So the sun is barely starting to come up, the moon is going down, the mountains are getting that alpine glow, everything is lighting up, and then the crane flew right over. This is not photoshopped, this is completely real, and this was the perfect shot out of a burst. And I was so, I mean, I wanted them across the scene, but I didn't have any plans to have one line up with the moon so perfectly. And the fact that his wingtips are just barely touching it, and that there was only 3 of them and they're perfectly spaced, everything just came together for this shot, and I was over the moon with excitement. Please, people, intend your puns. That was intended, and I'm very, very stoked about it. I got a bunch of crane stuff that I'm really happy with. I was testing out the R6 Mark II, and I got this shot, and I got this set really of this one and this one, because it's the same bird, same flight, about half a second apart. Coming in hot for landing, the R6 Mark II on the 1-500. Just absolutely I love the crane, I love the nailed focus, I love the background, I love the light. I love cranes in flight, birds in flight, so much fun. That was super awesome. This guy was another one of my favorites of the year. This little buck, again, like this 2022 was like for me the year of the young buck. I have gotten some photos of older bucks and bigger antlers and all that kind of stuff, but man, this guy just gave us the perfect photo opportunity, and we almost missed him. And I was driving around in Bosque, and just the last light, sunset, and it's just poking through the trees, and it just nailed him, and he was super close. And we're in the car and didn't even get out of the car, of course, and just bam, shoot him right in the face, and that backlight just hit him. And I love this portrait, this pose. He is super suave looking, and he's going to grow up to be an awesome dude. And then I got this other side light of him, the backlight. I mean, just the side portrait and the backlight. I just love it. Too cool. Too cool. And that is not cropped. That's not cropped in. That's only cropped for vertical composition. So he was close, because that was R5 500 millimeters. This guy taking off. I got the whole sequence from start to finish, like 40 shots of this guy just running on the water and taking off. And this is the one that I chose to isolate. And I could have been any one of them, but I love his wingtips. I love the blueness of the water in that first light. I love the golden light on him. I love that I nailed the focus. I love that it's clean background. You got some water splashes. It's just such a classic, beautiful image that I've been looking for a long time, and I loved getting it. All right, so I'll wrap this up with my last shoot of the year, and that was at White Sands, and that was just like a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago maybe. Went out to White Sands, and again, I only took the R6 Mark II and the 1-500, so I just came away with a really nice set of images that I was very happy with. This was the first one I took right from the parking lot area, and it was so windy this day. And I've been out at White Sands, dozens of times, hundreds of times, and I have been out there in some pretty gnarly winds, and I have vlogged it. So go just type in Brent Hall White Sands, and you find all my other videos. I did not make a video out of this for this time, but I did get a couple of video clips, and I did get these shots, and if you look in, you can see the sand dunes just alive with sand, with the wind blowing everywhere and the dust and the haze and the atmosphere was incredible. It hurt because it was so cold and windy and painful and sandy and the works, but it was so worth it because those types, I mean, look at that. You just see the dust coming up everywhere. And it's just amazing feeling to be out there and be in that light, be in that ridiculous, like, almost otherworldly looking landscape. I will never, ever get tired of the white sands. So here was my favorite 5 minutes of the whole shoot, and probably one of my favorite 5 minutes of all of 2022. So I shot this image, and then a couple, like 2 minutes later, I shot this image, and you can see how much the light is changing. And then a couple minutes later, after the sun finally goes down, I shot this image, and then it's amazing what the light can do to make you feel certain ways in an image and in a scene. And I love these three images as a whole, and I can't pick which one I like the most. Maybe leaning towards the second one, but every time I look at them together, I'm just like, I find different things about each one of them that I just absolutely love. And I think I'm going to print these three out as a series and put them up somewhere because I just love it. But this whole evening was great. This is another one of those incredibly soft, last light, ridiculous, otherworldly looking shots. And I love it. All right, so that was much longer than I expected. I did expect this to be a long video, but I didn't expect it to be this long. But what can I say? I have a really hard time picking favorites and narrowing things down. I just hope that maybe some of my enthusiasm or like stoke level comes through, and you can hopefully apply that to your own images and go back and see what images evoke that kind of feeling for you, whether it's any kind of powerful feeling, that may have captured, that you may have captured. And I think that's the best way to look at photography. And it's definitely, even just doing this video, I feel happier than when I started doing the video. And I feel very blessed to do what I do. I love you guys for being here with me. And I feel much more empowered to get over all of the negative things in the world and to keep moving forward. And I'm so stoked for 2023. So if you guys are still here, huge thanks to you. Hit that like button because it's the best thing you can do for me, and I really appreciate it. There's other things if you want to support the channel. There's the channel memberships, there's my preset pack, all of the goods like that. There's my workshops. But just the fact that you're still here, that you're liking my videos, that you're giving me your time, that is the one most valuable thing we have on this earth as human beings, is our time. And I super appreciate all of your time that you've given me. And I'm really looking forward to 2023 and making some more videos. So thanks a lot. Have a good new year, and I will see you in the next one.